Hi, and a really warm welcome to our video. My name's Sarah Elder, Senior Policy Advisor at IISD, and it's my pleasure to be your moderator today, along with my colleagues Erika Luna, Policy Analyst, and Elena Carnaro, Policy Advisor. This video highlights some key moments from our December 2024 webinar on women leading change in sustainable agriculture and market inclusion. We know women's opportunity to participate in global agricultural supply chains on beneficial terms remains a huge challenge, despite the critical role they play in agricultural production. Our research highlights the potential for voluntary sustainability standards to help advance gender equality, but only when they reflect an understanding of and address women's empowerment as defined by women producers themselves. In this video, we'll explore how collective action can enable women to adopt sustainable farming practices and access high-value markets, such as those for BSS-compliant products. We'll also share actions that organizations can take to support women in achieving their goals and creating meaningful change. My colleagues and I with the State Sustainability Initiatives team work to improve transparency and sustainability in agri-food value chains, to increase opportunities for producers and small-scale enterprises, including women entrepreneurs, to adopt sustainable practices and access diversified markets, and to have a voice and benefit fairly from their participation in such markets. We do this through research, strategic advice to decision makers, and multi-stakeholder dialogue. In this video, my colleague Erika Luna will introduce the topic of women's collective action in sustainable agriculture. Then we'll hear from several women with deep expertise and direct experience leading change in sustainable agriculture and market inclusion. Agnes Nyinawumuntu is a coffee grower and member of Twongere Umusaruro Kawa Women's Cooperative in the eastern province of Rwanda. Translated as increased production, the cooperative is made up of 125 women and 10 men coffee growers. Jacqueline Nyirandimubanzi is the president of Hingakawa, a women's coffee cooperative in the northern province of Rwanda. As a group of more than 550 women, the members of Hingakawa work together to produce, sort, dry, and sell coffee. Dr. Nguyen Thoa is the director of Vietnam Rural Industries Research and Development Institute. She has 26 years of experience working for better livelihoods, especially for women in rural areas of Vietnam. Yrene Rivera is Senior Gender Coordinator at Better Cotton, working to design supporting initiatives that promote sustainability standards in cotton production and practices. I want to thank all of our speakers for sharing their insights, and I'd also like to thank the government of Sweden for their support of this work. Now, over to you, Erika.
Hello everyone, my name is Erika Luna. I'm a policy analyst at IISD, and today I'll be sharing with you this presentation we've prepared on advancing women's collective action in sustainable agriculture. For the presentation's outline, I'm going to start by introducing the importance of women's empowerment in sustainable agriculture. Then I'm going to walk you through the concept of collective agency and present an example of how this works with women's associations in Rwanda. And finally, we're going to explore how can organizations support women in their empowerment goals. A lot of us know that women have a primary role in agriculture overall, but especially in sustainable agricultural supply chains. And it is at this level where gender relations are shifting. Women are actively taking over agriculture as primary farmers and gaining more confidence, leadership skills, and bargaining power as they organize themselves. So today we're going to discuss how not only women have a primary role in sustainable agricultural supply chains, but how coming together, being either together in associations or through cooperatives of farmers can also help them leverage this important role that they have. But first, we have to talk about women's empowerment, and empowerment as a concept has also a lot of times been used now as a buzzword. And also a lot of research and actions when working with women producers has focused on the economic dimension of empowerment. However, empowerment does not only lie on this economic dimension, but there's also other dimensions that we can measure when we are talking about empowerment. And also within these dimensions, which can be sociocultural, legal, political, or psychological, there are different levels at which we can look at how empowerment looks for women. So we can look at the household, at the community, or broader areas level. So for instance, for economic empowerment at the household level, this will translate into how much control over income the women within their household have. For the sociocultural dimension, an example maybe at the community level will translate into the access and visibility of that women can have in social spaces. Then, for instance, at the political level, this can look in broader areas by showing the representation of women's interest in policy, for instance. And finally, for psychological empowerment, this can also look at the community level on collective awareness about injustice or even collective expressions of inclusion and entitlement, and just have like the self of agency that women have in these broader spaces. And while we can talk about women's economic empowerment or about these other dimensions of empowerment and at these different levels, we still have to recognize that women small-scale farmers in particular face a lot of gender-specific barriers to practice sustainable agriculture and access high-value markets. Some of these barriers are restricted access to land, credits, and inputs. But also, if we talk about the group level or the cooperative level, women still have low levels of representation and participation in leadership positions. And finally, efforts to engage smallholders at large in markets are often either gender blind, which means that they assume that it will benefit men and women equally, and by being gender blind, they also focus on organizing perhaps rural women in single sex groups, assuming that this will guarantee the benefits are captured by women or empower them. Now we have to talk about empowerment at the local level. This is very important that we define or try to find the different definitions that women can have themselves for what empowerment means to them. Because empowerment, although is a widely used concept, the definition can be also very context specific. And more importantly, to get these definitions, it is important that we are not only trying to measure empowerment through indices, but also that these indices integrate some qualitative approaches that shed light on what different women in different contexts perceive as empowering. And finally, empowerment is cannot only be defined like at a global scale, but also is an ongoing and iterative process. And so all actions and projects that we are trying to implement have to take this into account. So like maybe empowerment is the end goal of a given project, but it's also a goal that it's gonna change over time. And if the project is done, that doesn't mean that empowerment is also done, but there'll always be some things that we can improve within that. And this is just a quote from Sen 2014 that said that women do not necessarily identify structural inequalities in global trade as the causes of their disempowerment, but rather see household and local group gender inequalities and patriarchal social norms as limiting their market access and interaction. So this is, again, just to say that while we can define empowerment at a global scale, it is necessary to go to high resolution to the local and the household levels to see how women are interacting with each other and within the dynamics of their own household. So now that we've defined empowerment and we've been talking about empowerment a lot, now we have to look into how empowerment is only an element within a wider spectrum of how we can be interacting and helping women access, for instance, sustainable agricultural practices trainings that can ultimately give them access to high value markets. So this is a framework that has been adapted by Kwesumbing. I'm hoping I can pronouncing that last name right, but this is a framework where it tries to break down the different forms where other actors are interacting with women or including women into their projects, and maybe they are talking about empowering, but in reality, what they are doing is reaching, or maybe they're just benefiting and not really empowering. And within this framework, of course, like the ideal goal will be, or like the ultimately goal for women to succeed will be that a project is transforming women's realities. But of course, like this is not to say that the other three, the rich, benefit, and empowering elements are not important, are in the and they are of course important because this is how we start a project, and this is also part of the iterative process of organizing and interacting with women producers in this case. So I'm just gonna go through the different definitions. So for reach, this framework defines reach as including, perhaps only including women in programs activities, and addressing some barriers of participation of women. So whether like timing and location of workshops or trainings. The benefit is when women are actually valuing the intervention and they perceive direct benefits from the intervention. And then empowering, as we've defined before within this presentation, is when, in general, when it increases women's agency and it strengthens their ability to make life choices and put them into action. And then finally, transform means that it's not only addressing or targeting women, but it also involves men. And it's a point where it also addresses structural and institutional barriers and also can mobilize the power of the collective. And this is why collective action can also be very powerful. So looking at women's producers, not only at the individual level as individuals, but also looking and trying to organize or help them with their own efforts to organize themselves into collective action is something that interventions, external interventions can, is maybe where they can have the most impact. And this is not only like for like agriculture in general, but it's just also how development interventions can also have a greater impact, because given the importance of groups and social networks to many development outcomes, as well as use of group-based approaches to service and intervention delivery, such as farmer organizations, we need to understand better how gender relations work within groups and how to measure collective agency, because in the end, like group membership will be key to empowerment and transformation. And co-ops, in the case of agriculture, can enhance women's access to sustainable agriculture. And this can also, like just the overall structure of the co-op can change harmful discriminatory gender norms if within the co-op there are women associations that are also like grouping themselves to differentiate the needs that they have, or even the resources that they have, differentiating them from men. And it's also at this level that gender relations can influence outcomes on a higher scale, and therefore transform the realities of not only a couple of individuals, but at a large, being part of groups like this can ultimately benefit women at a larger scale. So now I just want to share the example of Rwanda. At ISD, we have been working on doing more research on how women's collective action has helped women farmer producers of coffee to access sustainable agricultural practice trainings in order to access high value markets. And just to give you some context of the country, within Rwanda's agricultural co-ops, women represent 44, almost like half percent of the of members. And the government in general has supported the creation of agricultural co-ops in response to growing food insecurity. Um, and women are also in the number of both women and men are increasing. But it's important to know that women also are almost half percent of these groups. And some key milestones and initiatives that are happening in Rwanda, like one is the creation of different groups. For instance, we have farmers or co-ops that supply Angelique's Finest, which is a brand sold in Europe and in Germany in particular. And it is through like this brand that it's also like fair trade certified that women can access sustainable agricultural trainings and have a price premium for their products. The other organization that is supporting coffee farmers, women coffee farmers, is Sustainable Growers with the creation of Questions Coffee. So if you are ever in Kigali, I highly recommend that you go to Questions Coffee. You can also do a tour to the farm and visit the women farmers and see how coffee is produced, like see coffee trees, and they take you to harvest the coffee and see how they process it in order to make a cup of coffee. Um, However, some challenges are still on their like they're still facing challenges. So one is the gender bias, so like things that we've discussed throughout the presentation. There's also an issue of youth engagement. So some of these co-ops or the women farmers that we've talked to, they've pointed out the importance of engaging younger women farmers in the co-ops as producers, because of course this is a very intensive and like intense manual labor job. So having youth is very helpful for the groups. And finally, they've also identified that there's limited outreach to policymakers. So there's usually a communication gap between the women farmers and the government or policy. So this is where ISD is also trying to contribute with the research to see how the government can better communicate with women coffee producers. So now to end the presentation, I want to explore with you how can organizations, external organizations, support women's groups to adopt sustainable practices and access high value markets. Here we have a quote again from Agnes saying that external interventions need to design their strategies specifically for empowerment rather than assume that projects aiming to reach and benefit women automatically empower them. So this is, again, to say that external interventions, whether it comes from development organizations or voluntary sustainability standards, have to keep in mind that what they're doing has to have very clear goals in mind, whether they're benefiting, benefiting, empowering, or transforming, and that a lot of things have to be in consideration in order to know whether women are perceiving the interventions as empowering or transforming for them. So in the case of voluntary sustainability standards, some of the things that these standards can do is to provide trainings, but be also specific about the trainings that they are providing. So it's not only also about providing sustainable agricultural practices trainings, but also contribute with gender equality trainings that include both men and women. And this can help contribute to gender equality in decision making in producer and worker groups, especially in the co-op setting. Then VSSs can also support women-led commercialization projects, such as having a woman-made seal, so they can brand their products as that, as they find that to have very good returns. So it's not only about having, for instance, a fair trade or a rainforest alliance seal, but it's just a good marketing strategy to brand their products, or in this case, coffee, with such labels that can also differentiate them in the market. And then finally, it's not only about training, providing support, but also considering that whatever the intervention is, there will be patriarchal norms that make it difficult to promote empowerment within producer and worker groups, and may be reinforced if certification promotes male dominance of decision making. So that's why it's the trainings have to be about gender equality and for everyone, ideally. So that is it for my presentation. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, or also subscribe to the State of Sustainability Initiatives newsletter by scanning the QR code here on the slide. Thank you.
Now let's hear directly from women farmers who are putting these ideas into practice and leading change in sustainable agriculture and market inclusion. These women have embraced sustainable practices, improved their products, and gained access to higher value markets. Through their experiences, we'll learn about how collaboration and training empowered women to take on leadership roles in their communities, whether it's through enhancing the quality of coffee farming or promoting practices that support environmental sustainability. We'll also hear how VSS certification bodies can better support women's cooperatives, ensuring they have the resources needed to thrive and continue adapting to the challenges of modern agricultural markets. Agnes, could you tell us, does being part of a women's cooperative make it easier to adopt sustainable agricultural practices and participate in higher value markets for sustainable coffee?
Biratworohera cyane kuko koperative ni urubuga, ni ahantu hagaragara abantu bumvise ibitekerezo byabo, bityo kubona amahugurwa biroroha, ndetse no kumenya amakuru agezweho mu gutunganya ikawa neza, ibikenewe, ese niyi ifumbire twakoresha, ese niyi miti twatera igabanya ibyonnyi kandi itazabangamira amasoko. Rero biroroha kuko koperative ni urubuga abantu bahuriramo bagahuza ibitekerezo ndetse bakamenya amakuru mashyashya agezweho kandi bakabasha kuyakurikiza kugira ngo bagere ku musaruro mwiza. Dore ko nk'abagore bari mu ikawa yacu ku isoko irivugira.
How does being together as a cooperative help you to have those practices, those good practices?
Cyane kuba muri koperative y'abagore ikitubwira ko twakoze akazi keza ni uko dukorera ikawa ku buryo bwiza, ikawa tukayihera mu murima, tukayikorera, tukayikata, tukayisasira, tukayisazura, kandi tugasoroma ikawa yishije neza, ndetse mu kuyitunganya tugakurikiza ya masaha agenwe, igitumbwe kivuye mu murima tukayikurikirana kugeza ubwo yanitse kandi ikanikwa neza, tukizera neza yuko ikawa yacu ari nziza. Kandi ikindi dushingiraho ni uko tuba dukurikiza ibipimo navuga ngo bifatika byizewe neza, tukamenya ngo ifumbire ijyaho ni ubwoko bunini, kuko tuba turi hamwe, ubutaka bwacu burapimye, tuzi ngo bujyamo ifumbire iyi n'iyi, tukamenya gukurikirana ese niyihe ndwara yadutse, kuko iyo turi hamwe tumenya amakuru yaba aturutse ku mahugurwa y'abafatanyabikorwa, yaba aturutse mu nzego bwite za leta zishinzwe ubuhinzi mu gihugu. Ibyo byose bikurikiranyije neza, wizera neza ko uzabona ikawa nziza kandi ukabajya ku isoko neza.
So the question for you is, how would you improve current trainings to make them more useful in supporting you to achieve your goals? Like beyond trainings, what other activities could support your cooperative to achieve the goals.
Uburyo amahugurwa tubona adufasha kugira ngo za ntego zacu twihaye nk'abagore twishyize hamwe tubashe kuzigeraho. Icya mbere na mbere ari amahugurwa ntabwo ashobora guhererwa abantu rimwe. Icya mbere dukora ni ukuyasakaza kuri bagenzi bacu, uko birashoboka ko yahabwa itsinda ritoya. Icya mbere rero ni uko agera kuri buri muntu wese, kuko intumbero dufite ni imwe, dufite gukora ikawa nziza kandi nyinshi kandi ijya ku isoko rimwe. Ni nayo mpamvu tugomba gukora neza kimwe nta busumbane bujemo, bityo ya makuru tukayasangizanya. Ikindi, amahugurwa dukora agomba kujyanishwa n'igihe tugezemo, ndetse tukanibanda ku ikoranabuhanga. Iyo tujya kureba uburyo twakoreraga ikawa mu gihe cya mbere cyashize, uyu munsi turamutse tuzikoreyeho ntitwabona ikawa nziza, ntitwanabona ikawa nyinshi, kuko hari ibihinduka. Ikirere kirahinduka, ubutaka bugahinduka. Niyo mpamvu tugomba kugendana n'igihe, tukamenya ngo muri iki gihe tugezemo ikawa igomba gukorerwa ite, igomba gusasirwa ite, igomba gufumbirwa ite, kugira ngo tutazahora hamwe twahoze, kuko dukeneye gutera intambwe muri buri byose dukora. Niba ikawa twari tuyifite yera ibiro 5, tuyikeneye ifite ibiro 50, kandi ibyo byose ni inzira tugomba kunyuramo dushakisha uburyo twagera kuri ya ntego yacu twihaye, dushakisha icyakongera wa musaruro wacu dukeneye. Ku kijyanye n'ikoranabuhanga rero, ubutaka burahinduka kubera ikirere, kubera impamvu zitandukanye. Tugomba kumenya ngo mbese ubutaka bumeze gute, hagomba kubaho ubushakashatsi. Ubutaka bumeze gute, bukeneye iki, ese ikirere kimeze gite, hakenewe iki. N'uyu munsi turimo turashishikarira gutera ibiti bizana igicucu mu ikawa, kuko tuzi ko iyo imvura ibaye nyinshi ikarenza yatwangiriza ikawa. Izuba ribaye ryinshi rikarenza naryo ryatwangiriza ikawa. Bityo nidushyiramo cya giti kizana igicucu, ya kawa yacu turayisigasiye kandi n'uburyohe busiyongera. Ikindi navugaho ni uko hari uko ushobora gufumbiza ifumbire idakenewe, itagira icyo imarira ubutaka, kubera ko utamenya icyo ubutaka bukeneye. Bityo aya mahugurwa tugomba kuyajyanishanya n'igihe, ariko ikoranabuhanga naryo tukaryimakaza. Hari ikindi rero mwari mumbajije ngo hanze y'ariya mahugurwa ni iki kindi twakora kugira ngo za ntego zacu zirusheho kugerwaho. Hari byinshi twakora, muri byo navuga ngo turi mu buhinzi bwa kawa, ariko tugomba kubaho twaguka. Nk'uko umuntu abyara kororoka, n'ibyo dukora bigomba kwaguka. Icyo nashakaga kongeraho ni uko nari nabajije nanone, ese hanze y'ariya mahugurwa ni iki kindi tubona twakora cyakunganira muri bwa buhinzi bwacu bwa kawa, kugira ngo za ntego zacu zirusheho kugerwaho. Nari natekereje ko ku bindi twakora harimo kongerera ya kawa yacu agaciro. Ni ukuvuga ngo niba dutunganya kawa tukaba tuzi ko inyobwa, tugenda tukumbura n'ibindi twabonye ko na cya gishishwa twajugunyaga nacyo ni ikinyobwa cyiza. hakiyongeraho ko biriya bisigara bindi nabyo dushobora kubikoramo ifumbire, biriya bishishwa bindi dushobora kubikoramo ifumbire nziza kandi ikungahaye. Bityo nk'uko ubushakashatsi bugikomeza, nk'uko amahugurwa agikomeza, kawa yavamo byinshi n'ibyo twatekerezaga ko byatabwa, umuntu akaba yashaka ikindi byakorwamo. Ikindi ni uguhanga imishinga iciriritse yunganira ubuhinzi bwa kawa. Nk'urugero, uko tugendana n'ibihe bigezweho, hari n'ibyo tugenda twiyemeza cyangwa se bitubona ko ari ngombwa ko tubikora mu ikawa. Nko gukora ikawa y'umwimerere, dusanga ko hari amafumbire atemewe, hari imiti itemewe, bityo tuzakenera amatungo kugira ngo tuzabone ya fumbire y'umwimerere izajyana na bwa buhinzi dukeneye. Bityo mu mishinga twabonamo ubuhinzi bundi buzavana ubwatsi bwa ya matungo, haze n'ubworozi, ndetse tube twabasha gukora n'ubucuruzi. Urugero, nka ya kawa yacu ntitutahire kuyohereza mu mahanga gusa, tube twagira n'amasoko natwe acuruza kawa yo kunywa atwege.
Good evening from Vietnam. So actually in Vietnam, the women cooperative play a very important role. They can give more power to women in many ways in the agricultural value chain. So the first thing is relating the raising standards of living and economic conditions. The second thing is creating facility to encourage teamwork activities. The teamwork here both in production and also cultural activities like singing, dancing is very interesting when they gather together. And giving legal status to rural women in the environmental of the activities, and especially give the collective voice for the woman in exchange idea as to resolve some outstanding problems. It's very important. And as the presentation already mentioned so far, the woman cooperative can give the credit. That's much better because in Vietnam, it is very difficult for individual to accept for the loan, but for women cooperative can do it effectively. And of course, the training course and women cooperative can do many things for the community, like a nursery school, or they can create some kind of, especially some kind of cultural activities for their children and for the women themselves.
So as a global sustainability standard for cotton, Better Cotton works with small, medium and large cotton farms globally. And in many countries where we operate, women play an important role in the production of cotton, in particular in smallholder settings. So for instance, in India and Pakistan, 70% of the cotton workforce is women. But we see that they typically take up, they're limited to low-skilled, low-technical tasks and face significant barriers to access critical productive resources and markets, which are typically dominated by men. And so this really affects their productivity of the cotton farms, and it makes it harder for women to improve their livelihoods. As Better Cotton in 2030, or in 2021, we launched our 2030 strategy, where we are focusing on impact areas including soil, pesticides, climate, livelihoods, and gender equality, because we recognize that more needs to be done to increase women's voice and agency in cotton farming, and that sustainability cannot be achieved if women remain excluded. So supporting women-led initiative is important to addressing these challenges, because it allows to invest in equipping women farmers and workers with the tools, the knowledge, and the resources that they need to produce sustainable cotton. And when it comes to market access, women and women's collectives need the information to understand how the cotton market works, what buyers want, to be able to bargain and build a mutually beneficial relationship with buyers, such as ginners in the context of cotton. So I think by establishing these initiatives, we are paving the way for women's leadership and challenging gender stereotypes. And this is not to say that addressing gender barriers is solely about focusing on women's capacities, but as the framework that was shown earlier on the slides shows, it's equally important to work with men in cotton communities to challenge the gender norms, as well as with market players on the demand side in the cotton value chain, such as ginners and traders, to raise awareness about the benefits or the business case of working with women collectives.
The insights shared by these women show us the power of collaboration and sustainable practices in creating lasting change in the agricultural sector. To stay updated on our work and hear more stories like these, subscribe to our SSI newsletter and follow us on social media. The links are in the description box below. Thank you.